Welcome. We are live with Horsefly and the Inside Talent podcast. I'm Craig Fisher from TalentNet Media, author of the book Hiring Humans. Today I have with me Will Crandall and Erica Oliver from Horsefly, and we are going to talk about strategic planning with labor market data and how to turn that into some kind of real world action for 2024. Erica and Will, in that order, please introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Erica Oliver, and I am the CPO at Horsefly Analytics. I've been with the company since last year, and I'm excited for the opportunity to join you and your audience today.
Hi, I'm Will Crandall, CEO of Horsefly. I've basically been solving HR problems with data for most of my life.
Jerry Jimenez is with us already this morning saying hello. Hi, Jerry. How you doing?
Morning, Jerry.
Jerry and I worked together many years ago for quite a while at a company called Stark. And Tony Stark was not the founder of that company.
How did you know I was going to ask that? I'm a huge Iron Man fan.
So this is funny. In order, I worked for a company called Matrix and then Stark.
Wow.
Get out.
Yeah.
Love that.
So
this is late 90s or early 2000s. All right. So as talent acquisition advocates, what are some of the key challenges we foresee in implementing strategic plans in 2024? And how can labor market insights help overcome these challenges? And then, let's kind of set that up, and then let's talk about how we're doing this week.
Sounds great. Do you want me to take that one first, Will?
Of course.
Okay, on it. So I would say, through the talent acquisition lens, how do we execute on our 2024 plans? The short version is together and collaboratively. What are the roadblocks that we come up against, particularly in TA, is really getting that alignment. So let's say the company strategic initiative overall is building a performance-based culture or driving a particular initiative. Depending on the department, there are different ways to get to the end zone, if you will. So I think the way that we get there from a TA focus is really try to drive, what's the right word? It's not collaboration. Basically find that North Star that threads through all the different departments, and that's data. And to give you a particular example, I'll say, let's take a TA use case that I think a lot of folks that are listening or listen to this later will relate to. So let's say that there is an initiative that we need to hire 100 people in Austin in engineering. Might be the case for some companies, not the case for other companies. And we need to get that done by the beginning of Q2. So how do we get there? If you're on the ground in TA, you have a perspective of what it's going to cost, what the labor market looks like, so on and so forth. If you're in workforce planning, you might be thinking about this in terms of contained cost. What is that maximum budget? If you're at the executive level, really kind of driving this initiative, you might be thinking, I just need the best people fast that can hit the ground running. And if you're from an HR perspective, you might be thinking, let's pause for a minute and let's look and see who we have available internally. If we center all of that thinking around data and understanding what the labor market looks like, we can make better decision on where to hire, who to hire, how to promote from within, and what to pay them. So that's my first pass at that. Will, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been really interesting this start of the year, Craig, when we've been the end of last year, start of this year. I think the senior leadership teams we're meeting today are a lot more focused and paying a lot more attention to business objectives. I think it's a much more higher pressured arena, and it's so important that you've got sort of senior leadership that are bought into the strategic business objectives and are able to plan effectively to implement them.
So the second part of my question there was, how are we doing right now? And I think, Will, you're getting to that answer. It's a weird labor market, right? I mean, we're still experiencing low churn. We're still experiencing kind of variations in hiring depending on if it's volume, blue collar, white collar sector. We are starting to see hiring come back a little bit in talent acquisition. So that tells me that we are gearing up for, trying to do some accurate strategic planning. And we anticipate that things are going to heat up. So I'm hearing this from a lot of my customers. Like you can feel the gears turning and wheels getting in motion. I think, sort of based on a lot of the market indicators we're seeing, and in talent acquisition, we see a lot of market indicators ahead of the rest of the economy. We're sort of in an election year, and interest rates are starting to do interesting things. Housing is coming back a little bit. Construction is starting to happen. So we're also rolling towards some sort of international conflict, probably, right? Yeah. So all of these things mean the economy goes, and we have to hire. So given that, we need to be prepared, and we need to kind of innovate on how we use this information to make some good decisions and make some good plans. We've talked before about how AI is starting to allow us to use some of this data to do predictive analytics and to be smart about thinking, okay, we have this work coming up. We anticipate we're going to sell more than we did last year, which means we need additional staff to make that happen. So Erica, I'll start with you. Just in your experience with Horsefly and before Horsefly, what are some of the innovative ways organizations can use labor market data to transform their strategic planning into actionable steps?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I love your point about, predicting what we're anticipating. So I would say, thinking about my time at Horsefly and prior to that, it'd be three key things. Understanding what you have. I think to your point about the economy, it's funny. Will and I obviously talk about day-to-day strategy, but just last night, we were talking about some of this big picture things as it relates to what's going to be happening globally and the elections and in the US, the UK, Russia, and the elections just happened in France. So all that's going to impact the global economy, probably in some ways very positive, in other ways maybe not as positive. So how do you action on that in a measured way? I think first, focus on what you have internally. We did that at Indeed, we did that at Meta, understanding the skills that you have that are with your existing employee base. I think number two, look at the external market data. So understanding what you have, where those skill gaps are, and then what it would take to either upskill or to hire externally. And then I'd say the third thing, thinking about predicting, preparing for when things get busier. It is going to be looking at the emerging markets. So I think for the US, thinking about our last chat, Craig, I think there's some real opportunity outside of the urban centers to hire, have some flexibility internally, like on-site, remote. There's a lot of great talent that's untapped. And then globally, there are emerging markets that are coming all over the place. Last year, it was Spain and Portugal and Lisbon, and so I think we need to stay close to what those look like both in the United States and globally.
Yeah. So you are making some interesting points about understanding what you have, right? And we know that internal mobility in a time of low churn is very important. People aren't leaving their jobs as they were in droves over the last couple of years. And that's because of economic uncertainty, right? And, we also hear, especially in white collar sector, if you watch the chaos on LinkedIn, it's right. It's difficult to get response from an employer these days in certain sectors. And so, understanding internal mobility and doing something, interesting with it will kind of ensure a company's long-term success. And knowing what the availability is of talent externally helps you to really challenge yourself to get strategic about what you do with your current staff. And we've got tools now, and certainly AI is helping to understand who we've got and what skills they should have by now, right? So they enter our organization and we have a resume, 5 years ago. And, after that, we don't have another resume. They might apply to jobs internally, but a lot of people sort of rely on the system to have their manager suggest where they should go in the organization. And managers don't love moving people around. They don't love losing people from their teams unless they're really good managers, right? And there are some of those, but we can kind of predict now a person in this role for this many years should have these certifications and these skills that we can kind of add to their profile and match against internal jobs. But Will, I would say, in your experience, we haven't really been good at workforce planning for a long time in the world of work. Is that getting better?
I think so. I mean, I went to a workforce planning conference in London. Can you remember what the name of the?
It was put on by the Strategic Workforce Planning Institute. Huge
Yeah.
conference there, yeah.
Oh, that was amazing. And it's always been a little bit of a joke when you're talking about the different departments within HR. It's like, oh, workforce planning, do they actually exist? And it's like they're really getting a seat at the table since this downturn has happened. So, you were talking about the fall off in talent acquisition. I mean, when you take away the bullshit jobs that governments report upon, and when you actually isolate, the actual jobs advertised by direct employers and not by CV harvesting, we've seen at the end of March, we've seen a 58% decrease in jobs in TA. And then for the remainder of the year, it went down a further 20%. But you're right, there's been a 12% uptick, which is generally, we don't know whether that's seasonal yet or it's, the sort of January bump that seems to happen. But it did increase a little bit at the back end of the year for the first time properly. But yeah, workforce planning. And so people have thought during that period, right, okay, we need to think long-term and strategically about scenario planning. Who does scenario planning? And, everyone's like, it's business planning, isn't it? Yeah, who does that? And I think, the things that workforce planning have been discussing for years, like these 3 horizons, not just thinking about 12 months, but, think about 2 and 3 years ahead. It's so important that, people have the leadership backing to do that type of work. they need the time, the space to actually analyze the organization strategically and come up with a set of recommendations with the ability to constantly update it based on the changes in the market. And workforce planning, I think we've invested a massive amount in 2024 to sort of really support that, because it's our fastest growing customer segment internally. And there's some, I think, skill-based hiring's the first time it's ever been taken seriously, with the tools that are available out there and people who know how to use them. So yeah, I don't know whether that answered your question, but that's where I see it.
So it does answer my question. And you mentioned something that I always find interesting, the silly statistics that come out from the BLS, or as some of us call it, the BS. And it's one of the things that I really like about Horsefly, because Horsefly does not rely just on those reports for the data that you can get from it. Talk to me a little bit about something that has been coming up a lot, recruiter enablement. So, right, you've got a platform that recruiters can use to really help make strategic decisions. And as we as talent acquisition people start getting pulled more into talent management, which is another great trend, I think recruiter enablement is going to be a big deal. So how can the average person sort of utilize a platform like Horsefly to figure some things out?
I mean, I'll kick this off. I think the very first thing is getting your manager leaders support to evangelize the importance of using data as we're filling jobs. And I think anyone who has been in that specific role, the biggest obstacle you have is overcoming that. Your job is, I have an open rec, you're the recruiter, I need you to fill it, and I want you to fill it in 90 days. Get it done. So the very first step of enablement is TA leadership, driving the importance of data, driving the importance of understanding what the market bears. Sure, you want an engineer, VP of engineering hired in 45 days with all these skills, then further enabled by looking at the data. And it's like, okay, so for what you're looking for, here's what it's going to cost. Here's what the market bears in that location. Here's the companies that they're coming from, and then have a more open conversation with the other side of the coin that I think is important when using labor market analytics is human intelligence. Like, what are you seeing on the ground? And I think if you have that human intelligence from your own searches, your team searches, internal data, along with external market data, you can make a very compelling case on how you deliver on the ask and where you help guide the leader to maybe look at what's possible and what might take a little bit longer. So that's where I would start when it comes to TA enablement. What are your thoughts, Will?
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. And like you said, Craig, talent management is an actual thing where there's like this sort of intersection of talent acquisition doing more strategic types of work. And I think it's important and the best people within TA are those that, don't just think about the things that TA have always thought about, think about what workforce planning do and about data.
So yes, very interesting. TA is used to being mostly reactionary, right? There has been over the last few years kind of a trend towards building out an employer brand function where you're kind of doing some inbound strategy there, which is not reactionary, right? It's getting ahead of the curve there. But I think now, as we have some of the tools, the AI tools, to do something interesting with the data that we collect and make it more actionable. Talent acquisition is going to have a bigger role there. And we have generally had a people analytics function that was largely hiring a BI developer to create some pretty reports, right? But now that's getting to be more, I mean, especially as we're dealing with, lower profit margins and things like that. We have to really get strategic about what it's costing us to hire people and what it's costing us to keep people. And so people analytics is going to be a big factor. And then HRIS certainly is going to come into play. So how can we effectively create some synergy in doing kind of cross-functional collaboration as it pertains to making, interesting decisions based on our labor analytics?
I wanted to start with one piece that you mentioned that that I'm really passionate about, and that's recruitment marketing and doing so in a strategic way. And I think the boots on the ground, like whether you're posting on LinkedIn or whatever that is, that's kind of like grassroots marketing. But there are a lot of new and emerging AI-driven technologies that can really help hone in on those targeted elements. And I think that in conjunction with labor market analytics, if you're going to spend 150, 200, $300,000 on your recruitment marketing budget, you want to make sure that you're spending the right dollars in the right place. So I think that's a huge opportunity for companies to get more out of their spend and hiring great people. I also think it's a great opportunity for those that are in TA or have been in TA for a long time. If they have a passion for this, they've done well with this, it's an opportunity for them to demonstrate what maybe isn't on that 5-year CV internally, and allows them an opportunity to navigate their career in a different direction. So that's my initial pass of that question.
I think you make an interesting point. When I started doing recruitment marketing and employer brand, kind of literally with those words in 2009, there were very few people that had a title with that function, right? And I was fortunate in 2015 to actually get a pretty big internal job at a Fortune 100 tech company with a global team of 5 recruitment marketing professionals.
Wow.
Right. I mean, yeah. And that was early days still. And when I started, employer brand and recruitment marketing was largely about job postings and then pretty pictures and pretty words. And I got to a point fairly quickly where I wanted to be able to prove that it worked. Right. And so this idea that you need to be able to track everything from source to hire and track your spend and everything else often comes down to process improvement and technology optimization, for HRIS. So I think if you're in this role, if you're doing recruitment marketing or employer brand, you need to be having conversations on a regular basis with HRIS and with your talent analytics people, and you probably are, but sit in on those vendor calls, try to understand what the reports are really saying versus, hey, you're doing really great compared to our other customers. That's not a real statistic.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
So, all right. So how can technology be leveraged to enhance some of this cross-departmental collaboration? I mean, I know we have wonderful project management software now, and Monday.coms of the world make things pretty easy. But even in your organization, right? And you've got a tech-heavy organization. How are you keeping the talent team involved in how technology moves the company forward?
Yeah, Erica, you've done specifically this indeed.
Yeah.
So probably.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take this. So I'm trying to think of a particular use case here. I'd say, yeah, I'm thinking of my last role in particular. The key was really, let's say, use case of X. So let's say a previous company, won't necessarily name it, had diversity initiatives, very aggressive diversity initiatives by a certain time, like 2030 has. And you really have to rally the troops to be able to either achieve those goals or reset expectations around those goals. So in this particular instance, there was a lot of cross-functional collaboration between like senior members of the TA team, the HR strategic business partners, the executive leaders of each silo, and then the technology piece, like a heavy thread through the IT department. And so, the way that we were able to get that done, it means that each department has to make some sacrifices. So some technology will be able to go through because it's multi-use. So again, labor market analytics serves workforce planning, serves talent acquisition, serves people analytics, serves like business intelligence for executives. So that's a good ROI on the spend. There are some things that are a bit more niche where if the focus is solely sourcing or this focus is solely assessment, that might be reprioritized because it really only serves one or two particular areas. So, I mean, the key is to come together, understand what's going to make the biggest impact across the board, prioritize those, implement those, and then just work together to enhance the product suite. I mean, we did that in my last company, and regularly 2 companies ago, either built it or bought it.
Yeah, and that's the situation most. So I work directly with a lot of big employers, but also directly with a lot of HR tech companies. And the build or buy question is always very important. And right now, I mean, so a year ago, HR technology was in unicorn status, right?
Yep.
And it still kind of is, but there are also some deals on the table that could be had if you want to acquire spot technology. And I think it's important to note that a lot of the HR tech startups that were thinking they were unicorns a year ago are now currently a bit of a value. Just my point of view on that. So for you employers and HR tech companies that want to add some functionality, well, call me. I have ideas.
Well, Craig, I get your perspective, like the build versus buy dilemma is one that's been around for, I feel like, a couple of decades, really.
Yeah.
And when I think about some of the internal mental analysis that enterprises have to go through, you may have the capability to build it, but do you have the capability to maintain it? Do you have the staff to maintain that? And so sometimes going the buy route or blended route is just far more efficient and gives you a lot more flexibility. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think when you buy, you also acquire a certain amount of customer support.
Yeah.
Right. And that's software is just software, right? Without somebody thinking about it on the vendor side and without really good customer support to get adoption done properly. I have this all the time. Companies come to me and they say, we want to look for a new applicant tracking system. And my reply is, do you really? I mean, do you even know what you bought with your current applicant tracking system? Well, no, the last TA leader brought that with them and we're stuck with it. Well, okay, but it might just be that your relationship is busted a little bit and you haven't flipped the right levers to use what you've got, because you're going to be stuck with that technology for the next 9 months to a year, even if you switch to something else. So you might as well make this work now, because how long are you going to be in this role?
Absolutely.
100%.
Right. So yeah,
Yeah.
make some hay while the sun's shining in this situation, and fix the relationship that you've got, even as and we're always, let's just say, looking to upgrade, unless we're stuck in an Oracle contract or something like that.
I mean, we've seen that firsthand, how successful that can be. I mean, Erica, her team obsessively sort of focuses on embedding the outcomes of Horsefly with the strategic business objectives, and having those conversations with the senior leadership is so important, and it makes sure everyone's aligned and everyone's getting ROI and things like that.
So in a situation like this, and this is a question I also get a lot. If I'm trying to convince an organization that they need to adopt a labor market data and analytics platform, very often the question is who owns it, right? Yeah. Who's in charge? And it shocks me that many organizations, even today, don't have a very well thought out or even any recruiting operations function. Right? I mean, it's sort of maybe handled by a senior recruiter or maybe handled by a TA manager. But it sometimes is even handled by an employer brand person, which is usually a fairly junior person. Mm-hmm. And so how do we help organizations kind of think about rec ops and what that should be?
So I literally just thought of two particular scenarios with existing clients, and then thought about a couple of friends in the recruiting ops space. I'd say the very first step is, if you don't know who owns it, what a great opportunity for someone to step in and lead the charge, right? Well, don't wait for somebody else to raise their hand. It's like, well, who owns this? Where's the budget coming from? And if everyone's stuck, what a great opportunity, again, to add to your resume internally, own it, drive it, go rally the troops around budget, and then take it to the end zone. I keep making these football references because Chiefs are going to the final round of the playoffs. So football's
having Chiefs.
Exactly. Yeah. The other thing is, Will and I talk about this all the time. I talk about it with my team all the time. Sometimes you're faced with difficult problems that there isn't somebody who owns the solution. So just step up and own it. I think people sometimes are waiting for people to make that position. So that's my recommendation. It happens in some of the largest companies that you would never imagine. But it's almost like something, Craig, I was thinking your work better than anything. But I think you'd be surprised when someone's like, you know what, this is what we need to do. I'm going to own this, and then get one layer above or two layers above of executive support, and then go drive it. Might end up with a new job at the end of it. So
there's a lot of good vendors out there as well at the moment, isn't there, who can help support the recruitment operation function within a business by coming with matching value proposition, based on where the business is. I think it's such a lot of resource out there people should, make use of across the board.
So I work with a fractional team on the projects that we do, and we scale up as necessary. And most of these people are ringers, right, from big companies that want more. And don't get the opportunity internally to do that. And so they either want to add extra hours onto their calendar working with me and some of the, massive companies that we deal with, and they get to sit in on really high level conversations and really understand what it means to do recruitment operations right? How to track things, analyze things, repair things. And I have in my organization a recruitment operations certification that my teams go through, so that even if they don't work with me forever, and I don't expect them to, I set them up to get their own gigs and do this kind of work. And when I leave a project with a big company, I will leave someone who then knows how to do that, right? Whether it's an internal person that we've trained or one of my people that stays behind. And I feel like that sort of care about the industry should be more pervasive, right? I want us to do better as employers, and I feel like you make a really good point, Erica. Step up and own it. Anytime I've been in a situation to say nobody's doing this, okay, I got it. I'm going to take this person, and we're going to do it. And most of the time, your employer is not going to pay you more money to do that, but it will benefit your career for sure.
1000%. And again, it's like speaking to the talent acquisition professionals that are listening or listening later. Now's the time for you to do that. If things are still slow in hiring, raise your hand any chance you can. Like, whether you know the space or not, you will come out of that like a better, more highly skilled professional. And you might talk yourself into keeping a job. I'm with you 100%. I think last thing I want to say on this philosophically, which means a lot to me because I came from the space and I have a lot of friends in this space, is that, your limits are only the ones that you set for yourself. That's the other part that comes with stepping up. I think we know, Craig, you also being in the recruitment space for a long time, there's so much more than talent acquisition professionals at any level do outside of just filling jobs,
Right.
So I think that's where it's like, don't let that message you get externally impact really what you do. And so just raise your hand, and before you know it, I mean, that's how talent intelligence, that whole discipline was born, out of sourcers that were getting a lot of data, compiling a lot of data, driving that out of spreadsheets to make decisions. Now we have a whole discipline around it.
We do, and very much like employer brand evolved, I do feel like, and when I started doing employer brand, right, I owned a staffing firm, and we didn't have sourcers. I was the sourcer. I was also the recruiter and the sales guy and the owner, and right, and so and I had other people like that, but the idea that we've now got these classifications within recruiting, and recruiting, by the way, that's what talent acquisition is now, ladies and gentlemen. It used to just be recruiting.
Exactly.
But now within talent acquisition, which was recruiting, we have talent intelligence, and we have employer brand and recruitment marketing, and we're growing into having real recruitment operations. And in order to do strategic planning, that function brings together sort of these cross collaborative teams that we spoke about, right? HRIS and TA and HR. So let's talk about success metrics real quick. If we're going to attempt to do strategic planning right, what should our goals be, and how do we move towards achieving them?
You want me to start on that one, Will?
Yeah, there's so many of them, isn't there? Which one? I mean, I think, yeah. I'll let you start on it.
No, I think you're reading my mind. It's like, it is so, I wish there would be 2 or 3 that we could say across the board would be like, hey, if you do these 2 or 3 things, you'll be successful in executing your strategy. And every company, small or enterprise, is just so nuanced. So we could say, here are the 3 things, but it's it's like the living organizational behaviors of each company that will impact what goals you should really land on. So I would say thing 1, decide on 2 or 3 key goals that cross-functionally people can agree to. You're probably not going to get agreement on more than 2 or 3. That's thing 1. Thing 2, set a timeline. Like, the number of times I think we've all heard as soon as possible. People either like break down, they're like, okay, I don't know what to do. It's got to be done now, yesterday, or there's no timeline. So it's like, I'm going to take my time and get to it, and the goal's no longer relevant. So thing 2 is set a realistic but aggressive timeline. And then step 3 would be to iterate. So let's say you break it up into 12-week chunks. You see where you land, you see what the progress is, you analyze that, look at the wins, look at the losses, much like software development, right? Well, you analyze, you iterate, and then you redeploy another cycle. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, and I think, to give you just two examples, me and Erica have been working on in the last few weeks. We had one client who had historically set really challenging diversity goals within the organization. It was just literally finger in the air, let's sort of see what we can do here. And their big goal was to sort of bring an external lens of what the KPI or target should be, for targeted locations, not just like thinking, okay, let's do this across the world sort of
broadly.
thing. So yeah, that was one, where they'd focused on that. The other one was a company in hypergrowth in the energy sector, and they had sort of two problems. Like they were super expensive to hire the green engineers where they were in the Nordics, so the growth was stunted. Because they couldn't hire the talent fast enough to carry out the work, and the talent availability ended up being net negative, which was but this is skill-based hiring as well. This isn't job-based. This is like skill-based capabilities, and they needed to scale that sort of capability. So, their goal was to sort of find new pockets of talent, and looking at cross-training people with a certain skill set. So they did a big map of how the skills evolved over time with us, which skills sort of and job titles led to these, to the talent they needed. And what they did is they looked at the section before they become the talent that they needed, and looked at the gaps that existed there, and they sort of, they looked at a new way to sort of develop the talent. But they also opened the office in Malaysia as well, which reduced sort of 30 million in the end in the savings.
Wow. So, okay, I'm going to combine a little bit of what you both just said. So, Erica, I love your ways to think about what goals should be, right? And so, I always fall back to what can you prove, right? And you can make up your goals, right? And just as long as you're proving something. So what can you prove? That's a good place to start. And for instance, if you're doing recruitment marketing or branding, and you can get your employee population to drive clicks or traffic by them sharing their own thing, right? About why they love working at your company, and you can prove that that's worth $300,000 in paid media. That's a great way to think about, okay, how can I knock down a quick win? Okay. And these 12-week iterations, I love that too, because that's something that if you're on the ball, you could get accomplished in 12 weeks. Now it might take you another 12 weeks to prove it, right? To get the data back. But, and then, so yeah, big wins, then save money. Okay. Can we prove that we can save money? And like Jerry says, 30 million is a nice big number. And it is. So, right. If you're saying, all right, I think we can save the company money because we figured out that our jobs aren't showing up on Indeed very well because they're coming out of the applicant tracking system looking old, right? They are carrying over old JSON metadata, and it's costing us in clicks and conversions. We're getting a lot of old clicks, and people are applying to things that they're not really fresh candidates, right? So these are demonstrable things. And then can we be more efficient, right? Can we do better? How do we say, okay, we might spend a little money, but we're going to hire more accurately, and we're going to do internal mobility better. Those things are a little less easy to prove, but worthy endeavors anyway. So, Will, have you seen examples of companies doing this well? And also, I want to compliment Horsefly on being a really good platform for, back to one of the things Erica said, for understanding diversity in the marketplace, and the availability of that, and then also being a great platform for sourcing in general. So, yeah, Will, any examples of companies doing a really good job at proving improvement?
Do you mean specifically about internal mobility?
Sure.
Or do you mean,
Let's do that.
yeah. So do you know what? I could give you a big global example that we've done recently, but one of the best ones is the UK Home Office. So what they basically did is, they were trying to attract data scientists to, what is a government sort of not very exciting type brand on paper. But they had an actually amazing team within what they were working on, and they did exactly that. They did a mass analysis of all the data scientists, across the UK, what roles they moved to and from, and so by understanding, okay, we can't we can't attract the data scientists that are currently working for all the big tech companies, but we can look at the data analysts or the data engineers that sat one step behind in the sort of career path. And they built out a whole training methodology of how to turn data analyst into data scientist. And so that's how they sort of got their coffers full of all the right talent by sort of bringing the training and sort of attraction strategies to different.
So between that and using labor data to decide to build a facility in Malaysia where you could hire green engineers at scale for an affordable price, I think those are really, really good examples of strategic planning.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's like all the type of things that we're talking about now, it's done as standard. So like when you're thinking about a new role, you always look at the adjacent job titles and skills. And
that's a good point.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the skills that are just behind what you're trying to hire, and then upskilling and training, right? Get all those people in your funnel, and build your organization that way, because you can figure out, and I've done this with Horsefly specifically, there aren't enough of those very highly skilled people to hire. No. They don't exist. They work for organizations that they're not going to leave. You're going to spend a lot of money on really highly paid recruiters who are headhunting those people, and it's a long game, and there are faster ways to get at it.
100%. And it's all about that sort of workforce planning, having the time and space to analyze the workforce, en masse, to understand all those opportunities that exist within the workforce. And talent management is part of that, 100%. So, yeah.
Impressive. Okay. So we're coming up to the end of our show for today. Can I get some predictions about what we're going to see this year in terms of improvement in the economy, improvement in how we're doing business, and how we're going about this sort of data utilization that we've got a kind of an explosion of right now?
Craig, I thought at first you were going to ask about predictions for the Super Bowl, which I am ready to deliver, but we'll answer after that. No, I'll answer it now. I think it's going to be Chief Lions, but
my wife says Taylor's team.
Yes, right. Tay's team. I love it. Mm-hmm. So is it okay if I start from predictions, Will?
Yeah, take it away. Okay.
So my first thought is, kind of how you started the show today, Craig. Like, I'm cautiously optimistic, and I think a key factor will be the election globally, and I think once we land wherever we land, I think the economy is going to move. I think people are tired of being where we are. I'm sure you watch the economy shows too. I watch Bloomberg all the time, and watching the year end, they're like, so the soft recession never hit. Now what? Is it going to be soft or hard? I think my instinct is that corporates are tired of the middle ground. They want to make money in like real growth and not just cost cutting measures. So I think we're going to see movement globally in the economy. It's going to be measured in cautiously optimistic. That's thing one that I see that I'll predict. And then the only other thing, prediction, I think with the move to really skills-based hiring rather than title and role-based hiring, I think that there are some very, very talented folks that have felt stuck in their career that will have a huge opportunity to change the course of their professional destiny if they're willing to jump on it. Those are my two predictions. 3, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think we started most of them from me. That sort of more predictive, long-term strategic thinking about your workforce. I think that comes in many different forms: talent management, workforce planning, talent intelligence, people analytics, all those type of things. But I think it's a shift in mentality, and absolutely having much tighter control of the business objectives and achieving them. Sounds quite high level and flowery, but I think in reality that's what it is.
I totally agree with you. And, kind of going back to those key business objectives, almost always one of those includes growth. And you can only grow so far and so fast when you cut so far and so deep. And that's the other thing that I think will drive economic progress, because I don't know where else people have to cut, really.
So I love that we're talking brass tacks about what is important to business, because that's really, personal politics aside, who cares? I mean, good luck to everyone, but it's business achievement that we're all here for. That's what we're talking about. And we do have to land somewhere. We don't have very great options.
No.
We just need to land somewhere, right?
100%.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to say thank you to Erica and Will and Horsefly for being with us today. Shout out to Nikki. Appreciate your participation, and Jerry and everyone else who joined in. We'll do this again on a fairly regular basis. I will invite you to the show and come hang out with us. It's always a party with this crew. And Eric and I will be together live at the TalentNet Live Conference in Austin on March 8th. Is that right, Eric? Right. Are you coming to Austin? Okay.
I'm coming to Austin.
All right. You can get tickets to that at talenttexas.com. They are on sale now, and early bird prices are in effect for the next few weeks. So get your tickets fast. It's going to be a good one. At Yeti's headquarters. Yeah. That's where we're going to be. I expect really good swag.
I was going to say, I think every time I talk to you, I have some Yeti around here. So even more excited. Love it.
Yeah. So we're going to have some fun there. And we're excited to see everyone in person. And if you are in San Diego next week, I will be speaking at the TA Week conference and doing a book signing directly after my presentation. We've got 50 books to give away. So come get yours signed, and we're going to have some fun there as well. We'll look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you, and go bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs.